Morning, guys. Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training and Joker. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of a yak session from a video that I saw yesterday from a trainer that was working a little puppy and running him around an agility field. Opiate. And he mentioned in that, with a bunch of backseat drivers that were saying, "Oh my God, you're grabbing the puppy wrong," and this and that. Everybody's an expert. Irritates the hell out of me. This trainer's name is Joseph Sanante. And Joseph is one of those trainers that's gone over to France, OPA, and actually competed with his dog in French ring over in their sandbox. He's very well respected, very well known within the French ring circles here in the LA basin, and very good trainer. He's a lot like me. He doesn't do flashy videos with a lot of different music and sound and all that. He doesn't have the time. He's working dogs. So he may be down yakking at the screen and talking about individual dogs, but at the same time, he's not a social influencer and all that stuff that you see. Correct. Good. I see. Nope. I see. Pas bouger. Good. I don't get Joker out and working as much as I should, so he's sloppy. That's why I brought him out. OPA. But what I wanted to talk about, he mentioned that he had these puppies he was working, about 16-week-old puppy, 4 months. And he was running them over this bunch of agility stuff. All right. Here. Up. Joker. Couche. Good. Pas bouger. So, then he caught a bunch of flack from all the backseat drivers and all those quasi-home internet warriors behind their keyboards that think they're experts that don't know diddly squat and want to give their opinions. So I was a little miffed by that. But one of the things that he mentioned was what he called genetics, and he accented French lines. Okay, so he's accenting France and French lines. What I wanted to try to get across to you folks today, get you a little education in this yak session, was what I call genetic stamp, and what's more important when you're going out to pick a dog. If you're going to go out and pick a dog for a function and have a dog more than just a couch potato, and even if you do, you need to know what you're getting into. Be careful what you ask for. These genetics in regards to Malinois, Dutch Shepherds, a lot of these breeds come from Europe. Little small countries all over Europe that have things that they're into. And they've been breeding these dogs for over 200 years, maybe more. French ring is one of those things. It's a sport out of France. And that's what he was accenting. It's got lines out of French dogs. What does that mean? To me, I right away dwell on that, right away key in on that, and realize that it's all about where the genetics come from and what they've been bred for, and what social aspects are causing these genetic stamps, meaning propensities within the breed that are there determined by the genetics, meaning where the dog's bred at, which part of the world he's bred at, what they're into and what they're doing with their dogs that create a certain predisposition within the genetics of that dog. Just because a dog is a Malinois, not all Malinois are the same. It's just because you need to be understanding bloodlines. Where does the dog come from? If he's a French ring dog, he's generally, as in Malinois anyway, he's generally smaller. Why? Because the sport dictates to get their high points of what they're doing and the criteria that's required within the sport. The dogs are smaller because they have what's called an esquive. The decoy is sitting there. They send the dog downstream, downfield. The dog goes downfield to take his bite, and the decoy at the last second will try to get away from the dog and get him to miss his bite. And if they succeed with that, the dog is losing points. Most sports all do things the same relatively way within their point structure. They start at 100, and then as you go out and do your job for whatever scenario you're working towards the dog doing, the dog is losing points when he's not perfection within that criteria of that sport, that scenario, individual scenario that's going on. If they don't fulfill the full scenario and don't do the job, I'll give you a good example. You send the dog for a bite. You call out because the judge says out your dog, and you call out, which means to let go, and that dog doesn't let go. And then you're allowed to have another one, even up to 3. By the 3rd time you haven't outed your dog, you're going to be DQ'd, meaning the dog can't out. You're done, right? So these criterias and the point structures all based on the highest and then slowly being whittled down. In French ring, they get really into that. There's a direct interaction between decoy and dog out in the field. The decoy's job is to challenge the dog and be able to test the animal. And within the rules of the sport, the decoy's got to play the game within the rules, just like the dog does. And the decoy is trying to get him to slide in his point structure. It's a test. It's a test of that dog's ability within what the training is regard and the genetics and everything else that come together to show that that dog can do the job to the criteria that the sport requires. If they don't, they're slowly losing points, right? And all the way down. You get done, you get only a 50 or 60. You might have so low, you don't at the end of your points, all these different scenarios, you might not be able to go out of the obedience and go do bite work because your scores weren't good enough. Sorry, you don't get to do bite work today. You didn't meet the criteria, right? So when you get into looking at these dogs, not all Malinois anyway, are bred from the same area. There's French Malinois, there's Malinois in Netherlands and Holland. There's Malinois like he comes out of Belgium. He's Belgium lines. He's larger. You see how big he is? He's a big boy. I like that. If you were to try to sell the large Belgian Dutch Shepherds, a lot of times they may not sell so well in law enforcement circles because you try to go and pick this dog up and get him to go over a fence and you're chasing after the bad guy. Like in LA, they've got nothing but yards. The cops got to go up and over the fences, get into that backyard, and they got the dog searching. They want a small dog. They can lift up, get onto the roofs, rappel down. So now that's become the fad. They want not the fad, the requirement in regards to it and the generalization of it because of the requirements of the dog on the street. Hup. Good. You ready? You ready? I'll show off a little bit. Come on. Oh, yeah. Nope. Good. Around. Around. Good. They call that an orbit. Couche. So I'm trying to teach one of my little Dutchies I'm working right now. Couche. Good. I see. Good boy, good. Yes, good boy, good. Yeah, go. Good boy, good. Yeah, boss. Out. So, French ring dogs, which was what Joseph was trying to accent, are smaller. They're more twitchy dogs. In other words, they're a lot faster when they do things a lot of times. The propensity of the genetic stamp. Talk about genetic stamp. Where's the dog bred? What's the culture around that sport that's getting the dog with over time, over 200 years of breeding, to become very consistent in their propensities within that genetic stamp where they bred for. Right? I'll give you a good example of that. Couche. Couche, correct? Good. Pas bouger. In KNPV, a sport that comes out of Denmark, Holland. Joker, get over here. Up. Couche. Pas bouger. In Holland and Denmark, KNPV is really a sport that's orientated towards law enforcement. And the sport dictates that with the suits that they wear. They're different than the puffball suits that we have over here in America. Let me put him away. Good boy. All right, I'll put you in a kennel so I come back and yak the screen a little bit. Yeah, good boy. Good. Hup. Joker says, I can't sit still that long, damn it. If I required it, I'd make sure he did it. But right now, I'm more into trying to accent these points to you in regards to genetic stamp, propensities of breeding, and being careful of what you ask for. These dogs that come over from Netherlands, Holland, KNPV stock are not generally a good dog for family. They're been bred to do a job. They've got a lot higher drives, and they're not somebody that's going to come home and sit in the couch and expect a couch potato, which is generally our society. Right? We have a society that basically is turning our dogs into couch potatoes. They don't require anything of them anymore because our lifestyles aren't asking the dog to do anything. We're not herding sheep. We're not out doing cows. We're not doing things that require the dog to have a function. And so we're going to lose it over time. But some of these European countries that are doing their sports real heavy are heavy into their criteria that sport requires. Those are where the dogs are being sold for law enforcement, for police throughout the world because of that, right? NVBK, I think it's Belgium. Belgium Ring has a larger dog because they want dogs for law enforcement, and their whole social aspect of what they've been breeding for is a little bit larger dog, and their genetic propensities are a little different. Calmer dog, just totally different genetic stamp as far as how the dog carries them. I was breeding Dutch Shepherds, and I do breed Dutch Shepherds. Periodically, I'll have litters coming out. And the Dutch Shepherds is bred in the Netherlands and Holland with that KNPV sport. And that sport is creating genetic stamps within the dog that you see again and again as puppies. One of those things is they have a guard of a box. They put that box, square wood box that they put out into the forest. The dog's required to go out and find that box, get on the box, and sit there and wait. And he's watching. and the decoy's sneaking up on him and sneaking up on him, and finally gets to him, and the dog gets to take a bite off of that box. He's protecting that location. So they do that a lot, and that's one of the big scenarios within that sport. And that causes, over time with breeding, these people are looking for these propensities that they want within the sport as they're choosing their puppies. And so when I get a puppy come out of that type of genetic stamps, I end up getting dogs that will be young, and they'll take their bull and it'll fall over upside down like this one, and they'll bat that bull all over. You hear the puppy going bark, 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 and the bull's going tang, tang, tang all over the kennel. They'll do that all day long. They'll beat the hell out of your bulls, and that's a pain in the butt, to be honest with you, but that's a propensity. That's a genetic stamp. Let's talk about another genetic stamp, IGP, Schutzen. When they go out and they pick their puppies, and they've been breeding those dogs for so many years, they're looking for certain propensities to meet the criteria that they require within the sport. What is that? A deep mouth bite, back to the molars, right? And they want a dog that's going to stay calm within the bite, meaning not growling, not showing weakness is what we look at it as. Because vocalization generally denotes the dog as being weak. These Malinois don't have that requirement within the sport, and the dogs are allowed to be vocal, and it's not frowned on as much, right? As long as the dog's not showing propensities of weakness that the judge will pick up on, the vocalization is not frowned on as much, because Malinois, Joker's a great example of this, love to vocalize, right? He loves to be vocal. He gets in that bite and he's all over the place, and he's expressing himself with everything he does. That's just his genetic stamp. That's his propensity. Could I have raised him from a young puppy and wanted that calm, nice bite with no vocalization? Yeah, I could have, but would I have succeeded? Probably not totally, right? You know, you look at dogs like Oscar Mora's got one called Guapo. Guapo loves to scream, and he didn't get that to stop when he was younger, and Guapo had a leaking problem. Leaking's another issue. So all these things, these genetic stamps. And so that's what Joseph was trying to tell you guys. He was accenting the fact that his bloodlines come from French Ring, and that denotes a different dog. So if I go out and I look, that person tells me these things, it tells me right away what I'm looking at that dog. Now, if I'm looking for that type of dog, I want to go out and do French Ring, that's the kind of dog I'm going to pick. I'm going to choose that dog based on the genetic propensities that are very prone and consistent within those type of bloodlines, right? There's bloodlines in Belgium. There's bloodlines in France. There's Czech lines. Czech lines not so much in the Malinois, but all these dogs, depending on where they're bred and what their societies are doing and the criteria within the sports, create a propensities and a consistency in how that, and over time that becomes more and more prevalent within these key areas that are desired within their individual sports, right? If I'm looking at IGP and German Shepherds, I want a nice deep mouth bite. I want a nice calm bite. I want a dog that stays calm and stays firm on the grip. He holds and he doesn't do this bit, right? He's not chewy. Comes in, he latches on, he's nice and calm, and he takes control of the decoy in regards to that, or the helper when you're talking IGP. So that's what Joseph was trying to denote, and I wanted to kind of accent that within a little yak session and talk about it a little bit. When you get a dog like a Malinois, not all Malinois are the same, right? You go down to the pound, you don't know what you're getting. That's why we buy dogs that are papered, because it tells us a lot about the dog. And then I always ask questions of the breeder. What are you into? What are you doing? Because that tells me what they're breeding for, right? That's why I want that kind of person instead of somebody who's just in the backyard. Somebody who's just a backyard breeder or they had that oops litter or whatever. They're not really into it, where they're really accenting and going after the criteria of their breeding lines as much as somebody else might be, right? So it's important. So, all right, that's about it. Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, talking about genetic stamps, what I call genetic stamp. It's my wordage, it's my verbiage. I call it genetic stamp. And it's important to understand these things if you're going to get into dogs and go out and shop for a good dog, right? You don't just go to Craigslist and buy a dog off Craigslist unless you get lucky and you have breeders that are selling their dogs and you get something that you can do a little bit of palavering with them and talking in the language that tells me a lot more about that dog's genetic stamp. So I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good day. Mark Ferrasci, Protect Dog Training, and Joker. Belgium lines, right? A lot different than your French genetic bloodlines, right? He's larger. He's a bigger boy. He's a calmer. He's got a different disposition, how he carries himself. His whole genetic temperament. His temperament, everything is different based on his genetics, right? That's what I care about, right? Be careful what you ask for. I'll talk to you later.